Welcome to the show. Here's my dad.
On this episode of the Infant Adoption Guide podcast, we are joined by Micah and Emily, who join me to share their infant adoption story. Well, hey there. Welcome back to the Infant Adoption Guide podcast. My name is Tim Elder. I'm a dad of three through infant adoption. This is the show all about domestic infant adoption. We give you the inspiration, the hope, and stories like we are going to do today so you can help you adopt faster with more confidence, less headaches, and just really instill some inspiration and hope for you that you can adopt. So thank you for joining me today. Now, if you're just starting your journey or you're considering adoption, you're struggling, or maybe you're overwhelmed how to start, how to find an agency, you're not alone. I'm going to give you something free, a free resource just to help you start, just to take a look at how do I find the right adoption agency. So there's a free guide I'm going to give you called How to Find the Right Adoption Agency in 4 Steps. Free resource for you. It's going to walk you through what these 4 steps are, how to find the right adoption agency, evaluate them, and choose the right one. If you go through that and you're like, I still need some help, I really want to dive deeper, you can get the course at findmyadoptionagency.com. It'll help you step by step, walk you through the whole process of finding that adoption agency, the right one for you. So let's get into our interview today. It's with Micah and Emily, great couple who just adopted their son as less than a year old, and they have just a great story and a great heart as they share everything about their adoption journey and as they adopted their baby boy a little bit less than a year ago. So here's the interview with Micah and Emily. All right. Welcome to the show, Micah and Emily. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. Yourself?
Good.
Excellent. Thank you for joining me today. I love stories. Infant adoption stories are awesome part of this show. So I'm so glad you guys reached out to me and were able to get you on the show and talk about your journey and talk about what's happening or has happened to you right now and where you are in the process. Because and we'll talk about this later, but I always say adoption doesn't end when the baby's placed with you. So we know that's happened so far, but we'll get into your story. And I want to just say congratulations, first of all, that you were able to adopt. And I know going through it 3 times, I just feel that joy and that energy. So I love hearing these stories, and I think the audience does too. So what led you guys to start the adoption process? Like how long before you thought about it, before you jumped in and decided to do it? I'll let Micah go first. Sorry, Emily. I'll let you jump in.
Sure. And first off, before I get started, thanks for doing what you do too. We've really enjoyed your podcast, and it's been a great resource. So
thank you.
Really appreciate what you do.
Yeah.
So what led us to adoption? So it was something that we had talked about even before we were married, when things were starting to get serious in our relationship, and we're getting close to getting engaged, and we're having conversations about family and long-term life decisions, things like that. One of the topics of conversation that came up was adoption, and Emily grew up in a very unique home where she was a biological child, but her family actually ended up adopting 5 kids, and so she was very, very open to this idea. And because I was able to see that beauty of adoption through her family, it made me very excited about the idea as well. And so we were talking about it from before we were married. And really our game plan was, hey, let's have biological kids while we're young and healthy. And then a little bit later in our life, then we can adopt. But that was really always part of our plan moving into marriage.
Adoption has always had a really special place in my heart. I have 5 siblings that were adopted, a nephew that was adopted, and 2 cousins that were adopted. So adoption was the way that we grew our family, and it was such a blessing to us to be a part of that. And so I always had wanted to adopt. And so that's one of the reasons we talked about it, even when we were dating, is because it was such a blessing to us. And I saw how beautiful it was. So it's always been part of something that we've wanted to do, that God's laid on our heart.
Yeah, we ended up starting the process sooner than we expected. So like I mentioned, the game plan was, while we were young and healthy, have biological kids, and then start the adoption process a little bit later. And really what we learned after several years of infertility and some conversations with doctors is that, we have some unique circumstances where it's going to be very, very difficult for us to get pregnant. And then it would be very difficult and even dangerous to stay pregnant. And so, that was really hard news to hear. And, we had to deal with that and process that. But once we really had worked through all of that, we both kind of talked together and said, hey, we've talked about adoption in the past. Is this the time for it? And we both were in agreement that this was the time to bring a child into our home through adoption.
And our goal was really the whole time, our goal was not to be pregnant. Our goal was to be parents. And so adoption is one way that we felt God wanted us to grow our family, and we felt like the time was right. And we were excited to start that process.
That's awesome. Yeah. And the fact that you're on board at the same time, it was huge. I know not everybody can claim that. And some of these listening may be going, yeah, I wish we were on the same page at the same time. So it was, did you have any tips on how you're able to get on the same page at the same time, or it was just really just communication and talking through it?
I think because we had talked about it so early, that helped. But then also from the time we got married, we actually kind of like slowly started to research adoption. So even before we decided, okay, it's time right now, we actually had already done research on the different types of adoptions. And so we kind of had a basic understanding of what that would look like for us. So I think that helped, because it wasn't like, all of a sudden,
Right.
It was kind of like we slowly thought about it.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a huge help. Yes. So it wasn't too shocking for you to have to sit there and take a bunch of time. It was kind of a slow process. I like that. So how did you decide on domestic infant adoption? So adopting a baby in the U.S. rather than maybe international or through the foster care system?
Yeah, so we talked about all three options and looked at the pros and cons of each, and really why we steered away from specifically international is everything going on in the world with COVID, where we're seeing borders close and situations with other countries being very volatile. And we said, this isn't the right time to be thinking internationally. So we need to be thinking domestically. And then when we looked at foster care versus infant adoption, what we really liked specifically about domestic infant adoption is one was the being able to have the child from when they're a baby, and two, the potential partnership with the expectant mom and birth mom, the ability to have an open relationship with them. That's what really appealed to us about domestic infant adoption. We had a couple people that were in our church that had gone through this process as well. And so we interviewed them and asked them questions about the process so that we wouldn't be going in blind. And we really felt like that's where the Lord was calling us.
Awesome. Yeah. So you had people around you that knew about adoption. That's huge. Not everybody's able to do that as well. So I was very, very supportive. Was your family also supportive as you made this announcement? Or maybe you didn't make an announcement, but you started to tell people about it. And did you tell your family as you were talking to your church family?
Yeah, great question. So we told our family first before we announced it to anybody else. And originally the plan, it was going to be this like super serious dinner where we're like, all right, guys, this is what we're going to do, blah, blah, blah. And then I kind of had this conversation with God, and he was laying on my heart, if Emily had gotten pregnant, we wouldn't be treating this like a super serious situation. We'd be celebrating it. It's this party the whole way. And so that's the attitude we really embraced. And so we treated it like it was announcing a pregnancy. So we had a birthday party for a family member, and had taken pictures beforehand with us holding signs saying we were going to adopt. And that was one of the gifts that we gave. And so they unwrapped it and it was, what? And, turned it around. And it was exactly like if you were announcing a pregnancy.
Oh,
and
that's so cool.
And then for family members that live far away and we're not able to do something like that for, Emily and I were coming up on our anniversary, and I pretended like I made a slideshow about it and was like, hey, I want to see what you guys think. Can you give me feedback on the slideshow? And the song in the slideshow, with all these pictures of Emily and me, the song was I Just Haven't Met You Yet from Michael Bublé.
Oh, yeah.
And so everybody's listening to it thinking, okay, the pictures are great, but why did you pick this song? And then you get to the end of the song or the end of the slideshow, and it was like, hey, we're actually adopting, and put in the pictures that we shared with other people. So we tried to, as much as we could, make it a party the entire way.
That is so cool.
Originally, when we wanted to do like the sit down dinner that was more serious, the reason that was like our first instinct was because there were so many unknowns and the wait times were so up in the air because of COVID and stuff. And so I think it felt a little bit more serious because, we weren't sure how long we were going to wait. But now that we're on the other side, I'm really glad that we made it a celebration because it is something worth celebrating. So I'm glad that we did it that way.
Yeah. And to answer the second part of your question, family on both sides was super supportive of it. Obviously on Emily's side, where they had adopted 5 kids already, they were familiar with a lot of the terms and what the process could look like. So they were able to give some coaching. And then on my side of the family, they were just so excited for us as well and excited at continuing to grow our family. So we were really blessed with the support we received from our family.
Yeah, that's so cool. That is so cool to have that kind of support. That is awesome. Yes. Let's get into your journey a little more. First of all, when was the baby placed with you?
So baby was, he was born on March 29th.
Okay. And
he was born 6 weeks early.
Yeah.
So we actually were staying in the NICU with him for 2 weeks after he was born. And then we took him home.
So March of 2022.
Of last year.
Yeah, so he's 10 months old tomorrow.
Okay, I asked a question that's not easy to answer for you, is it? You have a lot that went on before you just had a baby placed with you. So let's back up. You chose an adoption agency. How did you choose them to help you on your journey?
Yeah, so we actually had some friends that have used Christian adoption consultants to kind of help them navigate the process. And we had a friend that actually works there as well. So after we interviewed our friends and asked them questions about it, we decided that we felt like that would be a good fit for us. And they have a lot of great perks for being in their consulting. They have birth moms that you can talk to and adoptees that you can interview. And so they have a lot of great resources, but then they also help point us to some ethical agencies and nonprofit agencies. They had agencies that they have vetted and have seen have successful placements with many different clients and stuff. So we felt like that was a good fit for us. And we really enjoyed the experience that we had with them.
Yeah, and our approach with the agencies was to take the list of vetted agencies from Christian adoption consultants where we know they're ethical and on the up and up. And it was almost like building a stock portfolio where we said we want to be in 6 different agencies. We want 3 of them to be large, and we want 3 of them to be smaller nonprofits. And there's pros and cons to being in a large. There's pros and cons to being in one that's smaller. But we wanted to cast a wide net. And so that was our approach. And we ended up matching through one of the smaller nonprofit ones, which is what we were secretly hoping for. But that was how we approached the agencies.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that explanation too, because I think somebody listening to this might go, "What is an adoption consultant?" And you just kind of explained it pretty well there, how they vet different agencies across the country and people that they work with all the time, and know they're ethical and know they're work well with them, and they're not going to close the doors the second you try to sign up with them. So all those things are important part of an adoption consultant. So I'm glad you explained that a little bit for the folks listening. How did you handle your adoption budget? And I know having a consultant is a little more expensive because they're doing all this stuff for you. But you do get that, which is the extra hand holding and helping you find the right agency. But how did you handle your budget? I mean, a lot of people that come into adoption are just overwhelmed when they hear 20, 30, 40, $50,000. How do we, the ordinary people that don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in the bank, afford to adopt? How did you deal with the high costs and going into that?
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the questions that we had going into it. Even when we decided we were going to adopt, was okay, how are we going to afford this? I don't know the faith of everybody that's listening, but, I believe in the God of the Bible and that he's sovereign and is a provider. And so when we first decided to do this, we went on a walk and we're talking about the financial aspect and praying about it. And we actually came across a very expensive, very nice stroller, and it just had a sign on it and it said, "Free, please take." And we felt like that was almost like a sign from God. He's going to provide for us. And that's what we experienced throughout the adoption process. So what happened? How did we get the adoption funded? So one of the things we did was we had a yard sale, and we told a bunch of our friends we were doing this, and they donated a bunch of items to the yard sale. And it was kind of like a win-win where we got to take their junk for free and then we got to turn around and sell it. Made a lot of money at the yard sale. We sold T-shirts as part of the adoption. Yeah. One cool thing that we did was we had sponsor a puzzle where it was a 1,000-piece puzzle, and people could donate $10 and essentially buy a puzzle piece. We'd write their name on the back, and it took us maybe 3 months to fill that puzzle out. There's some that was significant. And there were generous people that would find out what was going on and say "Hey, I wanted to give you this money." There was couples at our church that we've never even met that heard about it that would start sending us money as well. Dog sitting is another thing that we would do. So we've got a great home and backyard for dogs, and it's a fenced-in yard, and our dogs play well with other dogs. And so we ended up being the doggy hotel for a little while, to the point that our neighbors thought that we had changed jobs and that I was now working with an animal shelter because there were dogs in our backyard, new dogs every single day. Yeah. That was fun.
Yeah, that helped. And of course we tightened up our own budget.
Right.
And we applied for every grant that we knew of.
Right.
So a lot of work, but
yeah. And one story with the grants too. So Isaac, our son, he was born 6 weeks early, but his birth mom's water broke at 8 weeks. Oh, yeah. And they gave us the call and said, or 8 weeks early, and they gave us the call and said, "You need to come down now. She's going into labor." And our financial plan had assumed that we would have another 8 months to save out of our budget, and that we weren't not 8 months, 8 weeks. We're going to have another 8 weeks to save, and that we weren't going to have to stay out of state just for a couple of weeks. And so we're driving down thinking, how in the world are we going to pay for this? And then while we're on the way, we get a call that we had just been awarded an adoption grant that covered the extra cost that we needed. And so, just to tie things back to the way I started the question is, God is sovereign and he's a provider. And that's what we got to experience was his providence and his grace, even in the midst of our own weakness.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. That is amazing. But one of my questions was going to be how your faith has played a part in your adoption journey, but there you go. You already, we've already hit several spots of where your faith has played a big part, and that is very cool. What would you say is what was your biggest contributor to financing your adoption? Was there one thing that, that one thing probably helped us the most, or was it your budget, or was it the side hustles, the puzzle?
I would say the puzzle. I think that was the biggest thing that benefited us, because not everybody can give, donate large checks or anything. But selling one piece for $10, I think people felt that they could, have a part, play a part. And it was really neat because when we put the puzzle together, we could see everybody that had donated. And so it was kind of cool to see all the support along the way. But I definitely think that the puzzle was probably our biggest success as far as fundraising goes.
That is so cool. Yeah. Were you able to sell all did you have 1,000 pieces?
It was 1,000 pieces. We sold them all.
Yeah, we sold them all in about 3.5 months.
Wow. So, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And some people would even get multiple puzzle pieces, but as their budget would reload for the next month, they would say like, all right, give me 3 more and stuff like that. It was great.
Yeah.
And did you get people updates like how many puzzle pieces you had sold? Or
Yeah, we took pictures. Like as we would add to the puzzle, we would take pictures and show the progress of our puzzle. So it was cool. It was really neat.
Absolutely, I love that idea. Anybody listening to this, if you're in the middle of your adoption budget or just trying to figure out how to afford it, there's a great idea. Thank you for sharing that. So you mentioned already a couple times about being matched and the baby coming a little bit early. Let's walk through that. So you selected your adoption agency. You agreed to work with them. About how much time from then to when you were matched was it? How many months?
Yeah, so it was about 4 months. So because we did like the interstate adoption where we used a consultant and we were in multiple agencies, we saw about one situation a week, which I think is pretty is a lot. And we ended up presenting to five different people before we were picked by our son's birth mom. And that took about 4 months to be matched. So
the adoption wait is always the hardest, right? When people are like, okay, we finally decided to adopt. We signed on with an agency and we made our profile and now we're just waiting to be picked. And some people get presented, multiple times like you did. And then other people might wait a year before they even hear about anything. I mean, that's just heart-wrenching. What did you feel like when you're going through the adoption process and you're listening, or the wait, I should say? How did that feel to you?
Yeah, transparently, that was the hardest part of the whole adoption. And, going into it, you think the hardest part is going to be raising the money and, things like that. But the hardest part was that waiting game, and you wait and wait and wait and wait, and then you get the call and they say, that you didn't get picked, and it's so hard not to take that personally. Every single time. And I knew, I should not be taking this personally, but it's like it cuts to your heart every single time you get that rejection. It's like, you're not good enough to be the parents of this kid, is what I was hearing every single time. And so I really struggled with that.
Yeah. And I think that the waiting was the hardest part, and just not knowing the unknown. Like, it feels like it's going to go on forever. And looking back, it went pretty quick for us. I mean, 4 months is not a lot of time to wait comparatively, I think. But in the moment, it feels like it's going to go on and on. Right. So it is difficult.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned faith playing a role in our adoption. One set of verses in the Bible that stood out to me here comes from Lamentations 3. And I was hoping I could share that just in case there was anyone else waiting.
Yeah, please.
But Lamentations 3, and he's talking about being sad and depressed and all the terrible things that are happening in Israel. And he says, but this I call to mind, therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases, and his mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, the soul who seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good that for a man to bear the yoke in his youth. And then a little bit later in the chapter, it says, the Lord will not cast off forever, for though he cause grief, he will have compassion according to the abundance of his steadfast love, for he does not afflict from his heart to grieve the children of men. And that's a verse that really helped me through the entire process, really, the infertility at the beginning, the waiting, the rejections. I found so much hope in those verses and wanted to share those.
That's very good. Yeah, those are some famous verses I know I've heard many times in the past. So yeah, you never know. I think if especially if you have faith and you're part of the Christian religion, you never know what verses are going to stand out to you. So I think that's a very interesting and cool way to deal with the adoption weight is go back and do some of those studies. Go back and look at some of those verses that maybe you haven't seen in a long time, and they may touch you a little bit differently when you're going through the adoption weight and you're reading them again and going, "Oh yeah, I remember that verse," and it hits you a lot differently. I think it would help you for people of faith like you and me going through that adoption weight certainly helps you connect and gives you that hope because that's all we really want is that hope that we are going to adopt it, that there is going to be an end, that we are going to come to the point where somebody will pick us and a baby will be placed in our arms. So thank you for sharing that. That's a great way to get through the adoption weight because it is one of the hardest parts of the journey. There's no question about it. All right, let's get into you. So you waited about 4 months. You were matched with this expectant mom, and she was not living close to you. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, she very very about a 13-hour drive away.
Yeah, it's a drive.
So, what did you feel like when you were matched with her for the first time? So she picked you. Were you able to talk with her right away, or how did that feeling go, or how did you react to how you were matched?
Yeah, so we were actually at our small group with some friends of ours, and we got a call, and we ran out to the car because my phone only had 1% battery, and we ran out to the car to plug it into the car charger, and it was January, so it was really cold, and we were freezing.
We're shivering, shaking in the car,
and she told us that we were picked, and we just felt so honored and excited and scared. And I've listened to your podcast a lot, and I've heard a lot of families say for multiple steps of the process that it's hard to explain all of the emotions that you feel in the moment.
Yes.
And it is so true because it's like I felt like it was surreal. I felt peace, but I also felt scared at the same time. And I felt like every emotion, but we were really excited. And really, I felt super honored, for sure.
We exchanged a little bit of a few texts with his birth mom, and she sent some pictures and opened up a little bit more as time went by. Where it started, very very short conversations, and then there was one time she sent us pictures of family members. And she said, hey, just to give you an idea of what your kid might look like. And so we thought that was fun.
Yeah.
One of the things that I felt like really helped with the openness of the adoption was one of our agency's idea where we had a virtual pizza party. And it was like a Skype call. And, she had pizza. The social workers were there and had pizza. We had pizza. And it was one of the most frightening things. We were both so nervous ahead of time. But we got along with her.
It went really well.
Very well.
Yeah.
It was a very natural relationship. She's very easy to talk to. She's hilarious. And so we were laughing. And that call, I think really, really helped with the openness.
Yeah, and I think at first, when she went into it, I think that she wasn't quite sure if she wanted an open adoption either. So being able to build that relationship a little bit really helped, and being able to see each other on FaceTime as well.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier that her water broke 8 weeks early, but Isaac was born 6 weeks early, so she spent 2 weeks in the hospital too, and so. And we had arrived and were there in the hospital with her, and by no fault of hers, when she realized she was going to have to be there for 2 weeks, that's frightening to hear for anybody.
Right.
And through no fault of hers, she was really feeling that pressure and that weight, and was really lacking that support system to help get her through. And she expressed to us, that she wanted us to stay with her. And it's one of those things, like, not by my hand, but in my lap. And we were like, okay, we're going to do this together, the three of us. And so we spent the 2 weeks in the hospital with her. We stayed the night in the room with her. And that was the biggest thing that contributed to the openness that we're now experiencing, where we were able to build that relationship together and have memories made with her. We made puzzles together. She has a puzzle that we made framed, and we have a puzzle that's framed. So she has one from us. We have one from her. She drew some pictures for us, and she's an incredible artist. She got us some socks too. We all got matching socks, which was tons of fun.
Yeah, and the socks that she got us, hers said push baby push, and then she got us socks that said baby you're worth it.
Yeah, it was fun.
And it was really, really sweet. And then she got us all matching bracelets to wear that we still wear all the time. And
can I share the movie night story?
Oh yeah, that's a funny one.
So right in the middle, it was like day 7 or something that we were there, and she said, hey, guys, I want to have a movie night with you all. And one of the things that Emily and I were doing while we were there in the hospital is trying to continue to help her to feel good about her decision to pick us. So talking about our support network, things like that. And so when she said she wanted to have a movie night, this light bulb went off, like, hey, we can not only continue to build the relationship with her and have this great experience with her, but I could also show her what movie night could be like for her kid. And so I ran to the store, and we got all this candy and popcorn and soda. And it was like the classic middle school sleepover, dietary wise. And so she picked this movie, but it was actually going to be pretty late at night that we were going to watch it. And she made this comment about, maybe we shouldn't do movie night. I feel like you guys are just probably going to fall asleep during the movie. And I felt like the Holy Spirit impressed on me, like she's not used to people keeping promises to her. So this is an opportunity for you to earn some trust. And so I said, like, I promise we won't fall asleep during movie night. And so she puts the movie on. I'm very tired. The lights are all out, and I'm powering through the movie, and we're getting about 15 minutes near the end. Still going strong. And I'm like, I'm so proud of myself. I'm like, I did it. I didn't fall asleep. And so I grab I was taking some sleeping pills at the time. Sleeping in a hospital, it was tough. Yeah, and that was helping me sleep. And so about 15 minutes before the movie, I popped a couple of those, and I was like, this is great. 20 minutes. I'm going to be out. This will be perfect. The movie ends, and she picks up the remote and flips to the next movie. And I was like, oh no, I promised her I wouldn't fall asleep. It's now 1 a.m. I've taken these sleeping pills. Like, I have to power through this. And so it was really difficult, but I stayed awake through it. It helped that it was a scary movie. I'll add that. It helped that it was a little scary. But then at the end of the movie, it's like 3:30 in the morning, and she was, you're still awake? I was like, yeah, I promised you I wouldn't go to sleep. And she goes, that was just for one movie. This movie was for me. This isn't part of movie night. So I could have gone to sleep, but awesome. Yeah, it was a fun story.
Yeah, that is fun.
Anyway, I'm rambling, but I'm just trying to show, these experiences that we got to share with her made both of us, both Emily and me and his birth mom, feel really good about the idea of having an open adoption.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what open adoption is. It's relationships, and you started building that relationship right there. That's just beautiful. How are you able to do that? And that's setting a foundation for your hopefully lifelong relationship with her. So that's amazing. That's so cool. So the baby was born, your son, and you finally get to bring him home. And tell me about that. How your feelings of holding him for the first time and bringing him home to your house, and settling in for the first time. How did that all feel?
Yeah. So when he was born, I shared a really special moment with his birth mom where we were holding hands and we were both crying. And I was telling her how strong she is and how proud I am of her. And then he was born, and she actually asked if I could cut the cord. So that was really, really special for me that I got that experience. And no words can really describe all the emotions that I feel, because I feel a lot of love towards this little baby. But I also feel sorrow for his birth mom and excitement for us. And there's just so many emotions that are going on. But ultimately, once he was placed with us, it was really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Just the whole thing was so surreal after, so many years of wanting to grow our family, and the heartbreak that's there, and the presenting to expectant moms and getting rejections, and then finally matching, and then spending the 2 weeks in the hospital with his birth mom. The whole thing was just so surreal, and I will never forget it. It's hard to describe the number of emotions that you're feeling, but it was incredible, and God's grace is absolutely what got us through everything.
Yeah, and it was completely worth it. Everything that led us to that point was completely worth it. And when I look at my son's face, I am thankful, even though it was hard, I am thankful for this journey because it led us here.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And it's hard to say when you're waiting, like you said, you don't know how long you're going to wait. And your 4 months could have been 3 years. It could have been 2 years, and there's a lot of people listening to this that are in that circumstance. And I always tell people, yes, it's hard to wait. We waited a long time for all 3 of ours too. You just don't know how long it's going to wait, but if you don't give up, that baby is going to eventually, the right baby is going to be put in your arms, and it's like you said, it's all going to be worth it. So I just wanted to encourage anybody listening to that, like, well, yeah, of course it was easy for them. They only had to wait 4 months, or of course it was easy. Okay, it's not easy, first of all. Second of all, you just don't know when you're in the middle of that adoption wait how long it's going to take. So keep going. If you're listening to this and worried about your own situation, like how long it's going to be. And that's why we're telling this story, really, to give you hope. Anybody that's listening, give you hope. It can be done, and it is done all the time. And Micah and Emily are definitely examples of that, shining examples of that. So I'll let Emily go first. What surprised you the most about being a mom through adoption? Now, I know you had 5 siblings that were adopted, and that helped you on your journey, but like you said, you're bringing home your son. What surprised you the most about being a mom?
So I think that the thing that surprised me the most was just the importance of having other adoptive moms in my life. And I know that that's hard to find, but I would encourage people who are listening to see if they could find even like a Facebook group or something online where they can get connected with other adoptive moms. Before we adopted our son, there's a lot of isolation and loneliness that comes with infertility. But after we adopted our son, I still find myself in a room with, maybe 4 or 5 women who are all talking about their pregnancy symptoms or what it was like to go into labor. And they should share those stories. That's a badge of honor for them. They should be able to share those. But I realize that there is still some loneliness that can come with that if you don't have other adoptive moms in your life to support you. So I think that was one thing that surprised me, is just how important it is to have that support group in your life.
And do you have that now? Is your support group there for you? Excellent.
I do. And I've actually looked online too. It seems like that there are some other support groups in our area too that I'm wanting to join. But yeah, I do. My sister-in-law is an adoptive mom, and my mother as well. So that's helped a lot. And we do have some friends. So.
Excellent. Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I mean, in person is always the best. If you can get a local support group, and we've got posts on that on our blog about how to find those and look for them and the importance of them. But if you can't find that, and it's just not possible, you don't have people around you that are that way, the next best thing is certainly going online. And we've got our Facebook group through the Infant Adoption Guide, a blog that you can get into them, and there's 4,500 people in there. So it might feel overwhelming, like, how am I going to get the support I need through 4,500 people? I get that. So this is why we created the Infant Adoption Guide community, which we break that down and get into small groups that you can meet with online. So I just, a little bit of a plug there because it just meshes so well with what you just said. But the reason we need community is to have that support, and adoption doesn't end when the baby's placed with you. You still need that support. So it's very cool that you realized that, and it's something important to you, because it's definitely going to help you throughout the rest of your journey as a parent. There's no question. All right, Micah, what surprised you most about being a dad through adoption?
Sure. One thing that surprised me was, transparently how instantly the connection I felt with my son, and I was prepared. I'd been listening to a lot of things about being a father, and hearing other fathers in my life, and many of them were saying, like, hey, when my son was born, it took a little while before I felt this connection, and that's totally normal. There's a lot of emotions going on. Don't feel like something is wrong with you if that happens. I'd listen to, podcasts about being a dad, and the guy would say, like, hey, when my son was born, this is, I didn't feel connected right away. You feeling a lot of emotions. Don't feel like something's wrong with you if that's what you're feeling. And so I felt like that was God giving me sort of some advanced notice, like, hey, you're not going to feel that connection right away. And that was totally wrong. I had right before he was born, I had actually stepped out of the room. They were going to run a quick test on his birth mom. And so I stepped out, and in just that couple minutes while I was gone, that's when he was born. And so I came back, and the door was closed, and I could hear him crying. And it was the way my heart melted, and the emotions that I felt, the joy, and like the pride that I felt in him, even though he's just been born, he's just crying, all of it was there. And that really, really surprised me. And I was really prepared to not feel that way. And so that was the biggest surprise. And there was a bit of like a mental shift that took place in my head, where my whole life, if you said, do you feel like you're the main character of your story? Truthful answer is I would have, yes, I feel like this is my story and I'm the main character here. Once he was born, this shift took place, and I was like, this is, my life is about Jesus. So I don't want people to think that there's something that's more important to me than Jesus. But this shift took place in my head, where it's like, my son is the character of the story now. I'm a side character in his story. Is really what the mental shift that took place. And it's not about, building a life for myself or my wife. It's like, this is his story. And so it's hard to explain, but those are the two things that really caught me off guard and that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, that is very, very cool. Yeah, we've had guys on the podcast before that have tried to explain that too, about being a little worried about having that connection and what it will feel like, and when that connection happen. And I don't think you can prepare for that. I think, just like you said, right, you're surprised because you can't prepare for that. You don't know what's going to trigger it. You don't know what's going to happen. But I can tell you with certainty it will happen. If you're sitting there, if you're a guy listening to this, or a lady listening to this, and you're worried about your husband, maybe that's popping through your head. Listen to what Micah is sharing there, because I think that is important to know. You just can't prepare for it, and you will be surprised at what will make that connection in your life and to that child. It does happen. It happened all 3 times for me too, and at different times. So that's a great story to share. I appreciate that. So as we wrap up here, I wanted to first of all thank you guys for sharing your hearts. I mean, you guys are so well spoken, articulate, and you just you share your heart so well. So thank you for agreeing to come on the show and do that. You guys are definitely special people, and your son is a blessed little guy. What one thing you wish you knew before you started the adoption journey? Well, like, oh man, I wish we would have knew that before we started.
Yeah. So one thing that I wish I knew is we were rejected 5 times after we presented before we were matched. And when we met our son's birth mom, I could see why why she felt like it was a good fit, because we had a lot in common. I do puzzles all the time. She loves puzzles. We all like baseball. Like, we had a lot of common interests. So I could kind of see, why we were a good fit. And his birth mom said that there were other profiles that she saw that she didn't feel like were as good of a fit, whether it be somebody who likes to travel or somebody who lives on a farm. But that was just her, her preference. There might be other birth moms that have great memories on a farm, or who love to travel. And so those would really resonate with them. And so instead of seeing it as a rejection, I wish I had just seen it as it wasn't the right fit yet. And that each birth mom picks the family that they feel like will be the best fit for them. And so we did end up getting a really good fit. And I think that it wasn't that we were rejected personally, but it was just that it wasn't the right fit or the right time. So I wish I had that perspective going into it.
Yeah, and it's hard to have that perspective, but looking back, yeah, it's probably easier to say, "Oh, yes, that's I need to think about that." So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
How about you, Micah?
For me, I feel like I put my life on pause while this adoption was going. So, if I wasn't working, I was thinking about the adoption, and especially if we're not seeing a situation, it's like, okay, what's wrong? How do maybe there's a 7th agency that we can apply to, or maybe we're going about this all wrong. And that's always been my approach to problems in the past is, if I face a wall, it's like, if I bang my head on this wall enough, I'll eventually dig a hole and can climb through. And what God showed me was I needed to really shift my mindset to from a sprint to a marathon. And where I started experiencing, more joy in the process and being able to actually celebrate it. We talked earlier about having it's going to be a party the whole way, even in the waiting. When that shift happened in my head is when, God said, you can't put your whole life on pause while you're waiting. So, do home DIY projects, exercise, engage in your hobbies, things like that. So that you can have that that marathon mindset, but also know that life is so much bigger than just the waiting, and that's that really helped me emotionally once the Lord showed that to me.
Beautifully said. Yeah, I love the analogy of the marathon versus the sprint. That is so true.
And we were sprinting too when we were doing our home study. They said in like the social worker said in 22 years of her experience doing home studies, she had never seen a couple turn in paperwork as fast as my wife did. I think she got all the paperwork turned in a few days. It was incredible. It was incredible. So we definitely were in sprint mindset and had to shift perspectives.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember, and when we did the pre-interview, we were talking, and a couple things you said, Micah, that really stood out to me was how you really admired, or maybe admired isn't the right word, but you watched how Emily handled everything through the adoption journey with just such strength and grace. And you said that she always knew the right things to say, and that you were kind of in awe of that. I mean, that was so cool how you said that, because I think that, it is such a teamwork thing going through adoption and working together. And handling things the right way, and if people with faith having prayer time together and sharing things together. That walk you took, when you guys were just walking and trying to talk about adoption, and you saw the stroller there available. I mean, those things you have to be open to and talk about in order to see them when they happen to you. So I so much appreciate that about you guys. You certainly have a special heart for sharing your story. Thank you for coming on and doing such a great job of sharing your hearts.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us. And again, thanks for what you're doing with the podcast. It was a great resource for us.
Yeah.
It was even a great resource for people in our support network where we were able to share episodes from the podcast, say, hey, here's this process explained, or this. It was very, very helpful.
Well, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. That's the reason I do it, is to help people like you. And so it warms my heart to know that actually happened. And now you can go and share your story with your own support group of, hey guys, you want to hear our whole story? Here you go. So I appreciate you coming on the show today. You guys did a great job. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Great interview with Micah and Emily. Man, they're just, I loved hearing their story. It went so fast. Everything they shared, they're just very articulate, and they just know how to share their hearts. So I hope you got a lot of inspiration and hope out of that story. If you probably need to listen to it again, just because they shared so much that was just so great. And if you want to do that, go back to infantadoptionguide.com/102, and we'll share all the links, anything we talked about today, the highlights of the show for sure, on that page. And you can see the picture of their family, which is really, really cute. I love that they came on and shared their story. And I love the fact that Emily shared about having support. And I shared a little bit in there about our Facebook community and our brand new Infant Adoption Guide community. And I just wanted to share a little bit more there. If you want to go, and if you don't have anybody and you're like, what do I do? How do I get support? How do I get somebody in my life that can help me know what to do and where to go and how to navigate this marathon, like Micah said, of the infant adoption? Where do I go? Well, you can go to infantadoptionguide.com. There's a Facebook group link at the top of the page. There's also a join our community link at the top of the page. Facebook group's got 4,500 people in there. It is a great place to just plop your questions in and go, hey, who's anybody dealt with this? Or how do you deal with that? And you can look over questions that have been asked, and it's not terribly easy to search for those things, but you can. And there's people in there all the time ready to help, including me, that are ready to answer your questions and help you just get some answers to what you got going on. But if you want to go deeper and you're like, I need more people, or I need more personalized support, that's why we started this community, infantadoptionguide.com/community. We break down that large community into small groups. We set you up into a small group so you can actually talk with people over Zoom or phone call or whatever, however you guys set it up. But you can talk to people live on a regular basis, including me, and chat inside of this community off of Facebook, off of social media, private website just for us, that we can talk and we can chat, we can share. And I've got a bunch of information in there too about just how to go through the infant adoption process. So I made this community specifically for you and me to go through the adoption journey, and it doesn't end when the baby's placed with you. That carries throughout your whole life. And I know, because our kids are getting older and I'm still needing the support. My wife and I are still needing support, as our kids have already been placed with us, but they're still growing and they're still understanding. They're still dealing with things going on in their life. And we're still working through our open adoption relationships with their birth families. So it definitely continues on. We all need support. Go to infantadoptionguide.com/community to jump into our membership site that is very specific, very special, very secret, very private, so we can all get that support that we so much need. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you got a lot out of this episode. God bless you on your adoption journey, and we'll talk to you next time on the show. Take care.
Thanks for listening to my dad.